We are committed to creating a safe and supportive space for our guests and listeners, and to provide information and tools that will help our listeners understand, manage, and overcome trauma. We understand that the healing journey can bring up challenging emotions. Therefore, we want to warn our audience that certain episodes may contain discussions or stories that could be triggering for some individuals. The content of the podcast is for educational and informative purposes only, and we encourage you to practice self-care and discretion while listening, and to reach out to a trusted support system or professional if you feel overwhelmed and need help on your healing journey. Hello and welcome back to Healing and Growing Hand in Hand podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Tickle, and our guest today is Violet Detre, and she's going to share her story. And, there's a statement here that she gave me that pretty much sums up her entire story, but she's survived molestation, gang rape, and suicide, and now lives a joy-filled life. I love that. She is a happiness advocate, a speaker, and an author, and she'll share her books with us, as well as her story. So welcome, Violet. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I'm so honored to be here.
So tell us about you. Tell us about, why don't you share the two books? Let's start there. And then you can share your story.
Sure. The first one that I wrote is called Ready, Set, Go with Brian Tracy. I wrote that a couple of years ago, right after I started on that journey of feeling more joy. And I said, wow, some of these things are really helping me. I would love to help other people with these. That'll be really useful for other people. So I just contributed a chapter, and hopefully it blesses people. And then the second one came about by me being an entrepreneur and how I found out more joy strategies, and that actually doing things through the power of joy can help you to do it easier, beat procrastination. Yeah. It's just, joy is so powerful and people underestimate it, but it's been helping me to continue to live in joy through the ups and downs of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, there's nothing there. It is very motivating to have joy. I mean, when you think about if you have a negative mindset, which I used to have, and it's hard to get through. Yeah, it's really hard to get motivated. It's really hard to take that next step when you just feel like gloom and doom. And I know that when I'm feeling joy, that's what definitely motivates me. So tell us your story, and then tell us how you got to this place, because that's a big place to go from and to, right? To go from the life that you had and how it affected you, and how now you're living a life that's filled with joy, which is awesome.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because my mom and dad were told they couldn't have children. The doctors, that's what they had told them. But my mom always wanted to have kids. And then I came along.
Same here.
So, so I guess I'm kind of a miracle baby, but then they had two other children after me. So that just goes to show you, even don't believe the experts. If you have something in your heart, maybe that's God's will for you, and just keep praying for that. So my parents were really excited and happy that I was here, but unfortunately, they were trusting of family members, and so was I. So a close family member molested me when I was young, and that's when all the issues began, I believe, because I wanted to keep myself safe. Fear came into my life. I went from a very happy, smiling baby, friendly with everybody, trusting everybody, to now, oh my gosh, what's going to happen here? Thankfully, I put that to a stop by God's grace. When he tried it again, I said, what are you doing? And he got upset with me, and he never came close to me again. So it wasn't like a recurring thing.
Thank God.
But there's something about people that have experienced sexual trauma that for some reason they repeat it again.
It's almost like you're marked. It's almost like you're marked. I've said that before. It's almost like you got it written on your forehead, and you're almost like a target.
Yeah. So when I was a teenager, I had all these emotions that I didn't know how to process. I didn't share what had happened to me with anybody.
Yeah.
So I didn't really give a chance to anybody to really help me and navigate through all those feelings and the fear and emotions. So when I was a teenager, when you have all those hormones raging, I was trying to figure myself out. I had built what I say to people is that I built walls
Mm-hmm.
to try to protect myself, but then I also didn't let in the good
Yeah,
things.
yeah. Yeah, and that's exactly
Um,
it. When you build those walls, you're behind that wall by yourself, and everything else is
right,
on the other
yeah.
side of it. Yeah,
And that's another thing too, that you start to feel
yeah.
lonely. That's one of the lies that I started to believe. A lot of the things were in my mind that I started to believe, the negativity, the seeing scary things everywhere. Um, and I was gang raped when I was a teenager and also didn't talk about it for many, many years. And my parents didn't know what to do with me for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so then I went to church. I went back to church because I had been saved when I was 8 years old. So I had a big foundation of faith. And my parents took me to church like almost every day, sometimes twice on Sundays.
Mm,
So I think that's one of the things that kept me kind of sane
yeah.
and not totally losing it at that time. So there was a point in time that I finally shared what had happened to me with my parents, and they hugged me and loved me, and there was a lot of redemption there.
Mm,
I started going back to church. Great things were happening. Met my husband, but again, I guess because of that big change, and then we moved overseas to Germany. He was in the
ooh,
military. Now he's retired, 22 years.
nice.
Um, but I was also away from family
Mm-hmm.
in a totally different place. And when I when I was growing up, school was my safe place.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
knew the boundaries. I knew what to do. It was a plan. I knew what classes to
It was
take. I
predictable.
always got A's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. But now that I had graduated, I was like, well, what am I supposed to do? I'm not good at being a homemaker and being at a job. I couldn't find something that I could do that filled my heart, that felt like it was my purpose. And I had anxiety as well. I had performance anxiety. So it's like I wasn't good at anything that I thought I should be good at.
Mm,
So I felt like I had failed.
mm-hmm.
And I wanted to bring in income. There was a big expectation of me because growing up I was a gifted and talented student. And so I expected, oh, when I graduate, I'm going to be the CEO of a big company, earn all this money. And that didn't happen. And then also, my grandfather, we had prayed for him, and I felt a peace that he was going to be okay.
Mm.
But in a few weeks, he passed away. So then that foundation of faith was
Yep.
shaken.
Yep.
And I'm like, God, then are you really real?
Mm-hmm.
Are you really backing me up, or is it you that's bringing all these bad things on me?
Ooh.
Like, where are
Yeah.
you?
Yep.
Um, so I guess that was kind of like the last straw. And although I did have a suicide attempt when I was younger, and one of my boyfriends, he was upset at me, teenage things. So that was my first suicide attempt. And then when my grandfather passed away, it was like I didn't know what to do, all these emotions again, try to take my own life. But it was 13 years ago when it was my last suicide attempt. And my husband came home actually earlier than I had expected because he was a soldier. He was expected to be there until they said you could leave, even though at 5 o'clock officially you were supposed to be let go. And this day he felt, no, I really need to clock out
Mm.
at 5. So he came home early. He found me in our living room floor. He said that he felt me and I was cold and my skin was also gray. But he was able to rush me to the ER and they brought me back to life.
Oh my gosh.
So
Miracle.
after that, that's when the journey of joy began. And now it's like night and day,
Yeah.
just living a
The one
whole better life.
the, the one thing I wanted to share is with the listeners is kind of what you were describing, what you were going through, and how you reacted to this and your behavior. And it's just I want the listeners to understand that, and I'm glad you weren't judging yourself. That you were sharing and that is what we go through. That is some of the thought processes and what you're going through, that when it's not healed, when we don't get to that deep trauma and heal it, this is what happens. And we get to this
Mm.
point of, where we sometimes attempt suicide. I mean, it does get you to that point. So what happened that got your attention, right? Because your husband came home and saved you, got you to the hospital. So what was it that made you think, okay, I need to do something different? What made you think that, or what thoughts were going through your head? And then what were your first steps?
Well, right after they brought me back to life, I was angry.
Mm,
Because I said, oh no, I was feeling all this pain. I was trying to escape from all this pain, all this failure, feelings of failure, all these emotions and traumatic thoughts coming to my head that I was agreeing with, which I
yeah.
now
Yeah.
realize. um, and I didn't know what to do, so I tried to go back to school, but I had my body, I guess, what I had done, it was reacting, and it's like, no, I couldn't go back to school because I couldn't focus. I hadn't processed, and healed from what I had done to myself.
Hmm.
And I say I went on another prodigal daughter trip. Um, Went out and was hanging out with kind of the wrong crowd, even though they were accepting, non-judgmental, which was like very different for me because in church I felt, this is the way my brain
Right.
was translating everything, is that I was being judged and I was expected this and that of you, or you were a bad person, or and so with this certain crowd I felt like I wasn't judged, and we would have ladies nights and go out dancing. And when I was out there just being free and not being worried about, oh, am I doing good or bad, I was like, oh my goodness, what is this little feeling that I love? I'm starting to feel happy.
Oh.
I'm feeling joy.
Hmm.
Even though it was under the wrong circumstances, unhealthy circumstances, uh, letting loose and not always like trying to be
Yes.
perfect. And, because of that safety thing, trying, everything has to go right and
Hmm.
control
Hmm.
everything, just letting loose, letting things happen. And my husband, like, what a saint. I was going through all this, and of course he was going through it too, but he had to just let it go and pray and trust that God was going to bring me back. And I finally did. I finally realized I was with the wrong crowd, and that going back to my faith was one of the things that would actually help me to help them find the answers that they needed, even though some of the things they were doing really helped me and really brought me back to, like, oh, okay, you can live in this life and enjoy it.
Yeah.
um, and then the real clincher is when at the church that I was attending, they shared with me a naturopathic doctor that actually told me what I was going through, some of the symptoms that I was going through, that I could actually get better.
Hmm.
Because, from all the trauma, also as well, I had bowel issues.
Oh yeah.
Um, and I also had braces and mercury in my teeth. So, in addition to all the emotional trauma, I was going through a lot of
Hmm.
physical issues. And there was a point in my life where it was hard for me to function. And that's why I was like throwing out my hands. I'm like, I can't even think. I can't even remember things. But this naturopathic doctor, he made me realize that I wasn't crazy. These symptoms,
Yeah.
these are like invisible diseases,
Yeah.
and the symptoms were real. And he said, I know a way for you to get better. So I'm like, okay,
Validated that,
yeah.
because that's the thing, and I've shared this before, is that, we have these symptoms from our childhood that's unhealed, and behaviors that we sit there, we know aren't right, but we don't know how to do it the right way. And it makes you feel like you're crazy. And I was just talking about this the other day, and saying how we'll do this behavior and people are looking at us like we're crazy, and we're looking at ourselves like, why am I doing this? And it messes with you. And so having someone say, you're not crazy, you're behaving
Yeah.
this way because of unhealed trauma, and separating you from that behavior is huge.
Yeah, that was like you said, the validation made a difference. And then I said, well, I heard that cancer patients, in order to get better, they have to be positive.
Yeah.
So let's try it this way. I tried it this other way. It totally led me the wrong way. Let's try it this way. And wow, that made such a big difference.
So what was your first step? So you're realizing that you want to head towards joy instead of the negative mindset that we carry, which you said something kind of profound earlier when you talked about that's how my brain saw it. I'm really glad you said it that way,
Mm-hmm.
because that's exactly what it is. It's the stuff that happens to us that affect our way of thinking, that is not our fault, that causes us to behave or say things or act out in ways. And like you said, you realize it's really not me, it's me acting out. And you're separating your behavior from who you are. And I want the audience to really grasp that, because that was something that I struggled with so hard. Is it just caused me to be harder on myself, right? Because, oh, I'm acting this crazy way, and then I would spend days and beating myself up because of my behavior. And so I really love that you said that my brain made me think that way. So it wasn't the way you're supposed to
Yeah,
be
and it's
thinking.
right. There's a verse in the Bible that says, as a person thinks in their
So is.
heart, so are
Mm-hmm.
they.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is huge, one of the huge things.
I know the Bible, I
Um,
got to look it up. I used to know how many times the Bible talks about the mind and how important the mind
mm,
is, as well as the tongue. But both those are so
yeah,
critical to our health and others' health, right?
yeah, right. And also coming into agreement,
Yeah,
because sometimes you get thoughts that are not even
right.
yours, and you can just say
Yeah,
cancel, or you can unknowingly sometimes agree with them, and then you start acting a certain way,
right.
or certain things start to happen that you don't want in your life because you have agreed to things that uh, will not serve
And
you
they're
or
really sneaky.
unresourceful.
They're really sneaky. And
Oh
that's why the
yeah.
self-awareness is so important, because those thoughts start, I recognize it when I'm like, I'm feeling funky. And then I realize, oh,
Yeah.
wait, what am I thinking about?
Yes.
Right? I'm feeling funky.
Exactly.
Something's not right. What am I thinking about? And then I'm thinking about something that made me mad a couple weeks ago, but I didn't realize it until I brought it to my awareness. Then I'm like, well, that's why I don't, okay, get that thought out of my mind. Right?
And that's so true. That was one of the gauges that I began to sense, because I was so weak that just getting upset, that's it. I'm off to bed with a migraine,
Yeah.
my stomach feeling terrible. That's the end of the day. I can't do anything else,
Right.
because uh, that strong emotion right there would just
Yeah.
obliterate me.
Right. And you got
And I said,
triggered.
oh, okay, I don't, yeah. And I said, I don't want this. I don't want to feel this way. So what helps me? What supports me? What helps me to be more resourceful? What helps me to show up better? And it was those practicing, I used to call them healthy, happy habits or joy strategies,
I like that.
because sometimes people also they medicate with food. And it's like, well, you have to see, is this
Right.
healthy? I know it could make you happy in the moment, but how is that going to affect you in the future? So those are some of the things that I started to, okay, does this serve me? Does that not serve me? What helps me to feel good? Going to the beach, ooh, makes me feel good. You know, being upset at myself about something that I couldn't help, does not serve me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just, so that's one of the differentiators that I started to notice. And then they piled up. Every little joy strategy or happy strategy just helped me more and more to strengthen my mind, strengthen my body, strengthen, um, it helped me to see life in a whole different
Mm-hmm.
way.
It does. And it's interesting because I was going to go somewhere with that. That talking about your mindset. So that's what I was going to say. It's like a muscle, right? because
Oh
when
yeah.
we've had, and I know this from my own experience, that when we have those negative thoughts, it's real easy to go down that road and hang on to those. When you start becoming aware of how those thoughts make you feel, and you start switching over to joy, and you pay attention to how that makes you feel, the thing I want to tell the listeners is it's a process. And you got to give yourself a lot of grace in this area because you're going to mess up a lot. And I can remember an example for me where I really became fully aware of this. I was driving to work, and it was not a good situation at work at all. It was a really toxic environment that I was working in, and but I had to go to work. And I had spent the entire drive, which was about 45 minutes to an hour, complaining out loud about how
Mm.
awful this job was, and went down the thing, right? And just by the time I pulled into the parking area, I was miserable. And it was interesting because I was walking up. There was a little distance from the parking garage to the building, and I can even visualize myself that I was even stooped over as I was walking. I was so
Mm.
defeated, and I'm sure it was God's voice just saying, "You need to stand up, and you need to throw your shoulders back, and you need to go in there with a better attitude than what you have right now." And it was just, it wasn't somebody being mean to me. It was getting my attention, to making me realize. And I took that moment and realized how awful I felt. Like I wanted to get in my car and drive until I couldn't drive anymore. And I thought, okay, all right, all right. And so from that walk, I just spent the time under my breath saying positive things and being thankful and having a grateful heart, and grateful that I have this job, that it is a good job, that I am paid well. And, this, by the time I sat down at my desk, I was a completely different person from when I walked out of my
That's
car.
amazing.
So, I'm saying, did I have it down after that? Okay, after that, I never had a negative thought, or I caught all negative thoughts? No. But it was a big eye opener. I could physically feel the difference from when I got out of the car to when I sat down at my desk, and from having the negative mindset to say, no, 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 even though it felt really uncomfortable saying this stuff and it didn't feel like it was right, I
Mm.
felt better, and it gave me the energy to get through that day.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I noticed me that in the mornings I would wake up feeling ugh.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, why the alarm? And why do I have to get up? And why do I have to do all these things? And I said, oh my goodness, I have, even though all these years I've been working on this, there's still things that I have to refine and
Right.
update. So now, I try to wake up more grateful and, looking forward to things in the day. Anticipation is one of the things that I wrote about in my book, about what great things are we going to be anticipating today. Expecting wonderful surprises. Who am I going to be connecting
Yeah.
with? Somebody wonderful like Lisa, sharing to other people,
Yeah.
bringing hope to other
Mm-hmm.
people. But it's interesting how just I went on automatic, and automatically in the morning I would just feel like the alarm, and
Yeah.
and then you just have to remember to switch that over.
Yeah. One of the things that helps me with that is ending my day with gratitude. If I can stay
Mm.
awake long enough when I lay down, because usually when I lay down, I go out. But I spend a couple of minutes just thankful for the day, thankful for the comfortable bed I'm in, and then I have a safe place, and, and
Yeah.
say a prayer for my family. And that helps, because I know exactly that feeling when that alarm goes off and you're comfortable and you don't want to get up. Joy is not the first thing that comes to my mind. So tell us some of those. Tell us, some of your routines. Give us the audience some ideas of what you do, because I know, and like we are just touching on, we struggle still. This is a journey, right? And so you're gonna find days
Yeah.
where you catch yourself like that, where, and give yourself some grace. You're a human being. It's okay. You're switching it. And so what do you do? What are some of the things that you do to help you through the day? And what would you recommend?
Well, what I would recommend is that, if you're a biblical person, if you're a person of faith, look up in the Bible those verses about joy. A lot of people, they stress you have to follow the law,
Yeah.
and things like that, which is the way I grew up. But thank God now, I know I'm under grace.
Yes.
But some of those verses in the Bible are commands. Rejoice, rejoice. Again, I say rejoice. And unfortunately, some of my friends would tell me, God wants us holy, not happy. And even it came from a book. It's not even biblical.
Yeah.
And for me, when I was growing up, there was this man called Happy Clown, and he was an evangelist, and we would do missions. Because when I was born and raised in Laredo, and you could just cross a bridge and go into
Mm.
Mexico. So we would do some evangelism out there. I would translate for them, and he would have us memorize verses and win prizes. I won this fancy Walkman because, I memorized some chapters in the Bible and several verses that they wanted us to memorize. But it's interesting, even though being in church, ever since I was 8 years old, even before that, because we were Catholic before that. Um, but all that foundation of Bible and memorization, it wasn't until after the last incident 13 years ago with suicide that God started revealing to me all these verses about joy.
Mm.
That He is a happy God. He
Yeah.
rejoices over us with singing, and he put joy inside of us. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace. It's the second one in
Right.
that verse,
Right.
and I never realized it. I never saw it. It's in me. It's already in me. And not only that, but when I was doing the research for my books, I realized that we have happy hormones inside of us.
Ooh, happy
We have,
hormones.
yes, we have six neurotransmitters to, get that joy in our lives, and it's embedded in us. And I just found it interesting that we have two eyes, we have four limbs, but we have six of those happy
Yeah.
hormones. And you can remember it by the acronym DOSE and then GN if you want to say good night. But it's dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, GABA, and norepinephrine.
Wow.
And there's different things that you can be doing, things like exercising, drinking water, getting fresh air, going on
Mm-hmm.
walks. I mean, I could go on and on and on of all the things and how you can build that muscle, like you were saying earlier, Lisa.
Yeah.
And then as you as you change your thoughts, as you reframe your thoughts, as you start doing these joy strategies, then those other thoughts that are not resourceful, they start disappearing. They start losing their
Mm-hmm.
strength. So there's actually like a pruning that you can do. I love how Carolyn Leaf puts it. It's when you think a thought, there's this little bud that starts forming in your brain, like literally in
Mm-hmm.
your brain. Um, your thoughts become things, and the more you nurture that thought, the more it grows.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's an unresourceful thought, it's going to be a dark, ugly, dry, limp tree, which is going to affect your emotions and your behavior. Or it could be a healthy tree that you can nurture.
Mm-hmm.
And once you start building those healthy trees, those other trees just dissipate. So I think that's what's been happening to me. I didn't even know, because I've been listening to this gentleman. I don't agree with everything that he says, but David Bayer, he was saying that you're actually neuropruning some of those thoughts when you focus on feeding
Yeah.
the resourceful thoughts, the positive ones.
Right.
But you asked me what are some of the things that I do, and one of the main things that I did for a long, long time was on my phone. I set an alarm at 3 o'clock. Why 3 o'clock? Because that was the time when I would start to feel
Mm.
low in energy,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Nap time.
And when you're low in energy,
I said
pardon?
it's nap time.
Yeah. And sometimes when you're low in energy, you're less cognizant of what thoughts are coming into
True.
your mind. And um, so I said, well, 3 o'clock, maybe I should ask myself, what have you done today to bring you joy? And I even set the alarm sound as a funny Minion song that would change my state. It would
Interesting.
make me laugh.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. And it's catching those thoughts though too, right? I gave a description the other day on my podcast that I mean this is how sneaky they can be. I didn't even there was something going on and all of a sudden I realized there was a voice screaming at me in my head.
Mm.
And it stopped me for the moment, and I realized that was my mom's voice. And it was a real, I don't remember what the thought was, but it was really critical. It was real, like she was screaming at me. And it was, it was the first time, and this was not that long ago that I really heard it. And had I, just meditated on that and not had the awareness of, whoa, wait, what's that? Wait, that's like, it caught my attention, and I was like, no, 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 no. And I stopped that thought, right? But had I not had that awareness, and I would have carried on with that thought, and it wasn't so obvious to me, I'm telling you, it would have been a really ugly day. Because that is exact. I mean, if you think about, if you take a minute when you're feeling down and you pay attention to those thoughts, and then you purposely go and try to do things to stop those thoughts and to change those thoughts and to make them more positive and joyful, it does make a huge difference. And so I was able to stop it at that moment. And now I try to be a little hyper aware of it if it pops up again, so that I can stop it. Because they are sneaky. They're not always loud like that where it's gonna get your attention. They're usually
Hmm.
they're just slimy. They are. They're slimy.
Oh yeah.
They just slime right in. Yeah.
And I love that you're saying that, we could just go in there and change it. And I found out that you can do it almost in an instant
Right. You don't have to
because
believe
my
that
husband
thought.
and
You
I,
don't have to believe that thought. That's not. We have
right.
options, right?
And we have the power to choose which thoughts we agree with. And I was walking with my husband because we like to take walks around our neighborhood and get some sun.
We do
Those
too.
are other joy strategies, including the drinking water. That's why I keep drinking water right now. I also have an alarm for that, by the way.
Mhm.
And we were walking around our neighborhood, and for some reason, something that he said like really put me off, and I started acting. He calls it
Oh,
prickly.
that's
Is
a
how I
good. Yeah,
act,
yeah, that's right. Yep, yep. I use that one. Yeah,
like a porcupine, and
yeah.
I was really upset about something. Um, we call it, a strong fellowship, but no, it was an argument. But we were still walking around, and I saw this gorgeous flower. It was a plant with, this pop of color,
Mm.
and I just noticed how the contrast of the stem and the leaves and these beautiful flowers that were there. And I turned to my husband and I'm like, "Look at that!" And I caught myself. I'm like, "Wasn't I just like super mad at
I
you?"
know exactly what you're saying. Wait, wait, I'm supposed to be mad. Wait, I take that back. Yes, I know exactly that feeling.
But that just like opened my
Yeah.
eyes to, wow, in an instant, I totally changed my demeanor, my emotions, and everything, and just let everything go. And if we can just do that, then we could just live a much better life, I think.
It's funny you say that because in this marriage that I'm in, it's a really healthy marriage, and that's an old habit that I used to do. Is if I was mad at you, I was gonna be mad at you for a while. Like you're gonna suffer for a
Mm.
while. I might do the silent
Yeah.
treatment. I might, I just remember doing that, and I'm not proud of it. But in this marriage, I've done the same thing where I'm supposed to be upset. We don't hardly ever have major disagreements at all. But it's like when I am upset, it's like the natural way my body wants to go is no, we need to stay mad. And I fight it. I'm like, nope, 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 nope. I'm not doing that because that doesn't feel good. Because when I think back to those times when I used to do that, that's a lot of work. It's a lot of negative energy.
Mm.
Nobody wins. Even though I may think I'm winning, I'm not because I'm creating division between us. And so now, when that rises up in me and it's still there, I'm like, no, 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 I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. Because, like you said, that moment of realizing, oh, such joy in seeing it, I totally get that. That beautiful flower. I'm the same way. I'm a freak about trees. I love trees and I love being outdoors and seeing that. And I'm the same way. And it's like, that's how I want to feel. I want to feel that joy. I don't want to feel that anger. I don't
Yes,
want to feel that
right.
crap that's in us. That's old stuff. And so,
Yeah.
I'm going to tell the listeners again, I'm going to remind you that this is a process, and you got to give yourself a lot of grace. Like, you know, and it takes a lot of self-awareness to pay attention to this and to change it, and and it takes steps, but it can be done. You're a fine example of that, as well as I am. And we can sit all day long and talk about how wonderful our lives are now because of the work that we've done, and that it and we're not anybody special than anybody else. This is for everybody.
Oh yeah. It's accessible to everybody. And I love what you're saying about the reward, if I do this, what reward am I going to get? And also having the intention, like, what is the actual intention that I want for my marriage?
Right.
And are my decisions, my choices, and my actions going to be helping that or taking away from that?
Right. Right.
That's really good.
Yeah, because I used to, the arguments would last days, if not weeks, right? And
Mm.
I think back on that, and that's a really miserable place to be. So, for me and for everybody else, and again, it creates division in the marriage, and that's not what I'm about anymore, And I'm not trying to
Yeah.
control it anymore. There's a lot of freedom in that, not having to control everybody, right? So,
I'm still working on
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I had an aha moment with God about that one, and He really showed me how I had
Mm.
zero control over anything else except myself. And I
Mm.
I had a full on tantrum. I was angry, I will admit, and then I was relieved. And then I was
Yeah.
relieved. I was like, "Whew, okay, that pressure's off." But then I had to unlearn all that behavior, right?
Right.
So
Right.
it's all a process, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what do you want to leave our listeners with?
Well, I want to ensure the listeners, first of all, if you are in crisis or know someone that is, make sure to reach out to a professional.
Mm-hmm.
I believe you can text 988 now instead of dialing the whole 1-800
Yeah.
suicide hotline, but people are there to respond to you 24/7. And you're never alone. People do care about you. And that's one of the lies that I bought into
Mm-hmm.
is the isolation. That's where if you don't talk to people about things, then you just start believing things that are not going to be helping you. um, and just remember there's always hope.
Yeah.
Never, never, never lose hope, because there is always hope. If I could be helped, after over 10 suicide attempts and now living a more joy-filled life, I mean, coming on this other side, I've been able to meet Les Brown, my mentor Pedro Adeo. I was able to interview Tom Ziegler on my summit for Christian suicide prevention. I also had Joyce Meyer's daughter on there, Sandra McCullum. Living on this other side is a much better
Yeah.
life. I tried it that way. I did not like it. Living this way is much better. And at first, it may be uncomfortable, but just like that muscle, the more that you exercise it, the easier it'll get. And it's just so much more enjoyable.
Right.
It's a much more enjoyable way to live. The colors look different. Life looks different.
Mm-hmm.
You show up different, and people react to that too, of how you
Yes.
go out, how you show up in the world.
So true.
Um,
So true. And that
so
transition period is a tough time, but and that's the time between when you're realizing, okay, I want to take steps to heal, and and when you're kind of deconstructing and reconstructing your life. That period it gets tough, and that is where it's really important to have a support system, have a person, people around you that support you, because that is tough. And you also, that transition, you also lose some people in your life, but you gain new people as well. So a lot of people get confused by that, and that can really feel like a lonely time, but it's really a time meant for you to go in and heal and do some deep work.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And tell our excuse me, tell our guests how they could get in touch with you if they wanted to do any kind of coaching or anything.
Well, they can always go to violetdetre.com. All the links are there for me. Instagram is where, you can reach out to me, message me, Violet_Detre. And that's where you can find me.
Well,
I hope that this has been helpful to everybody.
I'm sure. I mean, that was one of the important pillars to the podcast is giving people a voice, survivors, giving them a voice and sharing what they want to share about their past, but most importantly, their healing journey and where they're at today. Because I want our listeners to have hope. This is for everybody. Even if you're sitting there by yourself thinking, "Oh, sure, it's not for me," because I used to think that too. It's for everybody. We're meant to be healed. We're not, how our life started is not how it needs to end, right?
Oh yeah, and then there's much more. I know that I'm not even at the end of my journey. There's much
Much
more
more.
to
Yeah,
this.
much
Yeah.
more. And then we have the privilege to help others, and that always helps us too, you know. I know it
Yes.
helps with me.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your story and and just how we can find joy in our life, that even coming from the backgrounds that we come from, you and I have both found joy in our life and are continuing to find joy.
That's right.
So thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.